Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar with me, Adrian Weinbrecht. I imagine there's one or two friends listening in right now. And firstly, I just want to say a really big thank you for taking your time out to come and enjoy this afternoon, because the weather out there is absolutely stunning. So thank you for that sacrifice. Hoping I can give you all some information that's going to be really, really helpful to your careers moving forward. Just before we get started, I just want to make out really clearly that I love questions. So please, please, please feel free to make a note of any questions, stick them into the chat, and then we'll cover the questions at the end, and literally ask anything. If I don't know the answer, I'll make something up that'll sound really, really convincing. So to get started, those of you who don't know me, I'm half Australian and half German, and this makes me laid back and uptight. I started life as a stills photographer, so this is my background. And I'm not talking about the subject, but behind your subject, I'm talking about my background. So I started shooting weddings in Perth, Western Australia. That's why you can hear I've got a pretty dodgy accent. When I was a young fella, I was only 17 years of age, and I was actually studying photography part-time. So I was a stills guy. So if you're dedicated to video, don't hang up, because this gets better. And I was always a little bit ambitious, so I ended up moving over to Europe, and I've lived and worked in Switzerland, Germany, and then I've now lived in the United Kingdom for the last 20-something years. And I've been really, really fortunate as a stills guy. I've shot campaigns all over the world. I was interested in working at a pretty high level. I used to do a lot of things with television personalities and celebrities, and I was always pretty laid back about all of that stuff. It was just great fun. Apple's a client. I love shooting people. And this remains the same with filmmaking today, actually, because most films have people involved with them. So that's a little bit about my background in terms of the whole stills aspect. So after a very, very rewarding career in stills, I was lucky, I retrained for video. This took ages. I've formed a company with a partner, Alex Watson. We're called My Perfect Cousin, and we concentrate on delivering visual content, whether it's stills or video or whatever it happens to be. Now, I've got a confession to make, and this actually weaves a thread through all of my work, whatever it happens to be. I love light. I just really, really love light, and I still, having done this for a number of decades, get really excited by light, because what we're doing, whether it's video or stills, it's all about the light. If you haven't got great light, you don't get a great image. A great image is made with great light. Now, I know that sounds obvious, but I see so much stuff today that, I'm not talking about a Netflix series, but I just see a lot of sort of corporate orientated things. Occasionally a television commercial, stuff online, that there's just not a lot of consideration of light. And you see lots of really beautiful things as well. So light is transformative. This is the BTS here of something I did a few years back for Converse. And that's what we're actually getting out of camera. It's exactly the same scene. I mean, it's just nuts. Sorry about the crappy BTS picture. That's all we had resolution-wise. So this is, one of the reasons I love light, and the ability of light to transform a scene. Same thing here. This was shot near Manchester, February, dark, dark day, light outside. Suddenly we've got sunshine. And it's these things that it just really excites me about light. And the other thing as well is light doesn't have to be obvious. It's really great when it's natural. And this is actually from a series that I did for the BBC. And what was really funny is the BBC wanted me to shoot all these radio personalities for this rebrand, and the agency didn't want me. They had someone else in mind, because they felt that my work looked like it was too lit. Anyway, I created the whole series of images of all these radio presenters. And then the agency looked at the pictures and they were saying, oh yeah, this is exactly what we wanted, because look how beautiful that light is. Every single image here has been lit. They were really insistent that there was to be completely natural light. So there was natural looking light. So I just find that, yeah, that's quite a nice testimony, I suppose, in that regard. So, you know, today, one of the driving factors is around color. And I started with light because, as you all know, light is made of the component colors red, green, and blue. And it's from these colors that we get every other color. Also, I just wanted to say a big shout out to CVP for making today possible, and obviously X-Rite and BenQ, but we'll talk about those guys at the end as well. So back to color. It's something that has such a massive impact on what you're showing your viewer and the intent that you have within that image to convey whatever message it happens to be. And if you look at these images on screen now, this is Charlotte Hawkins. She's a Good Morning Britain TV presenter. I think she's on Classic FM as well. It's the exact same image, but it's just got a different color treatment. Now, I know that's really obvious, and why am I showing you guys this? Because today, one of the sponsors is X-Rite, and we use their color targets, and we also use their grade cards, which I'll sort of talk a little bit more about. Is that an editor could be looking at both of these pictures, and, you know, or let's say two editors are looking at both of these images, and one sees the image on the left and the other sees the image on the right, and they both think they're looking at something exactly as it was meant to be created or presented to the world. But if you don't have a known color reference, so something like a color target, how would you know which one is actually correct, or even potentially the intention of the director? But I think a lot of the people listening, I could be wrong, are going to be smaller businesses not always working with a director. So it's you guys that I'm thinking about. I use guys as a generic male-female term, that I'm really thinking about what we're doing today, because sets are going to get smaller, partially because of what's happening with COVID. And then also there's probably going to be a little bit of a sort of tightening of budget. So it's really about how efficient can we be with what happens on set and the number of crew we have. Same image again, just slightly different color treatment. And they just feel like two completely different images. So, as I mentioned earlier, most of my work today is delivering video and stills together. This is one of our USPs at My Perfect Cousin. This is from something we completed in December last year, and it went live in December as well. And this was a wonderful session where this is, you can see the sort of BTS of the still set up here. We shot video and stills. You can see that's one of our reds in the foreground there, and the artist in the frame is a lady by the name of Laura Mvula, and she was just spectacular, absolutely spectacular. Just a real pleasure and joy to work with. But every single bit of light you see in this scene is artificial, and it wasn't a big set. It was literally crew-wise. As you can see here, I'm just on the left of the frame, and there's a guy in black with the glasses on. He's my assistant. It was just him and I. Then we've got the art director, Daniel, and that's the stylist walking through on the right. So it's a very, very tiny crew, and we lit this entire space. We had 2 cameras rolling, and we delivered stills and video from it. You can check out our website if you want to see the completed picture on that. Yeah, it was lovely, and it got picked up really, really, really well across the world on the release. As artists and image makers, I think it's really important that we all continue to push ourselves and to experiment and to try things. And many years ago, I was one of the first people in the UK to do cinemagraphs. And this is from the first cinemagraph test that I'd actually done. And what was great about this is it got the attention of somebody else, and they were from Britain's Next Top Model. So a couple of years ago, I was a guest photographer on Britain's Next Top Model, and they got me in to create cinemagraphs. Now, this is coming back to light and my absolute passion for light, because I scouted the location and my brief was simple: create a Mediterranean summer autumn feeling. Trouble is, it was a wet, crappy day in the south of England. And my initial brief, actually, when I went for the scout, was to have, it was organic, lush forest. Okay, so it was a bit tricky. So we were up against it. However, with a little bit of consideration, you can see the umbrellas out. It literally was drizzling all day on this shoot. And a little bit of lighting and a bit of consideration around the lighting, we were actually able to come up with something pretty good in terms of the final result. Now, I'm mentioning this because this was a really crazy turnaround. We sort of shot it and then delivered it the same evening. So this was shot at, I don't know, I think maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, this particular image. All the light you see in the frame is from me. It was cold. The girls did really, really well. And this was the final setup. And I was really starting to struggle because it was getting very dark. And this here is the final image on that one. Now, we shot it, we edited it, we graded it, and we delivered it, and we sent it over around about 11:30 p.m. that night. Just bearing in mind, we were a couple of hours out of London at this castle down in the sort of deep south somewhere. Now, one of the reasons we were able to deliver the content on the same day we shot it is because we were confident about the calibration setups that we had, and we just knew that everything was set up correctly. And if you have a look on the left, there's a sort of uncalibrated view of this particular image, and on the right you can see the actual calibrated view. So unless you're in control of what you're doing in terms of your setup, in terms of your screens, your cameras, your lights, a lot of these things will probably look okay on, to you on your screen, but when they end up somewhere else, they end up not being right. So you've got to try to do your best to be on top of this. We can talk about that in the Q&A a bit more. This is Ben. I put this in every presentation I make because he thought he was being really funny taking this when he was meant to do some BTS pictures on one of the shoots we were doing. He works, now he's a freelancer, but for many years he was my first AC and assistant when we were doing photography. He's a great guy. So this is what Ben was meant to be capturing. I'm just showing this because I just love seeing behind the scenes of sets, and this was a reasonable size set. So I just wanted to share this. Now, I had a decent sized crew on this, but I also do plenty of work, like just recently, where it was just me, or it might be just me and an assistant going out and filming stuff. Okay, that's the nice thing about this job. There's a lot of flexibility. You don't have to shoot everything in one particular way. We delivered stills and video for this one as well. It was a new mattress brand that you could get delivered. And this is one of the stills from the campaign. It was about a soft mattress versus a hard mattress. I won't get too much into that. But the thing is, we had to be sort of pretty confident once again around our color because of the way this was getting approached. And there you go, the old X-Rite video color target in frame. So that's just like a little bit of a background and some of the things that we've been doing. But how does all this play out with what's happening today? we have a number of challenges. There's this little thing called COVID-19, which is a pandemic that's hitting the entire world that I'm sure everyone listening knows all about. But it doesn't mean we should stop or that we have to stop. It means we should adapt. And that's exactly what we're doing within our business. This is a really weird BTS shot. The plastic sheeting you see beneath that bag is, we now have plastic sheets wherever we go, and we lay them down and we create a PPE area. I've written a white paper for our business that we refer to using the APA guidelines. I've written it so it works for us, and this gets sent out now with call sheets in terms of how we should work in the new normal. Please ask questions at the end as well, because that'd be really great, because it's such an interesting space right now. So you can see the distance that's getting there, with my subject and myself, and I really am, a good 2 meters back, as the rule implies. With the color checker, I've got to admit, the way we tend to use it on every shoot we do is to actually get white balance, okay, for the camera. A piece of paper is not good enough for white balance. So we always use, there's it's like a gray card on the back, and we always use that. And the reason we use that is because it's spectrally neutral. A piece of paper typically has some sort of color within it. It might be slightly cooler, slightly warmer, and I really want to be as accurate as possible with whatever it is that we're creating in camera. Once again, it's really about creating distance. You see there, Ashley, my first AC on this shoot, he's a good couple of meters behind me. It's all completely doable. Okay, same sort of thing there, where you can see that I'm a good distance away from the subject, and they're just towards the screen, and then off we go. I'm just checking some of my notes here. Yeah, one of the things that's really important is you need to do a risk assessment of the location before you start filming. Can you be properly spaced in the location? So you really need to do that. Is there space to set up a PPE station so people can be washing their hands regularly or disinfecting them? I prefer washing with soap as opposed to always disinfecting. Are there plenty of masks? Are there plenty of gloves? Do you have disinfectant wipes? All of these things need to be considered. Is that station accessible for everybody? Is it going to get crowded? You've got to really think about all these things. And as we're moving from, in terms of the production planning, as we move from one location to another, is there enough room that you can pass equally? And you just need to plan a little bit more in terms of how you move around and how you go from one setup to another setup, whilst observing social distancing rules. And a big part of this actually is about making your client feel comfortable. Okay, obviously it's for your own health and safety reasons and your crews, but just as important, or even more important, it's about putting the client at ease with what you're doing. Now, one thing as well that I'd sort of noticed, if I just sort of kick back to here, we're tending to use, this is a classic interview situation, and we are tending to use longer lenses than ordinarily we would have. Okay, so we're just making sure that we are that bit further back. It has a little bit of an impact on the angles that you're able to shoot with as a consequence, but I would be thinking about buying longer focal length glass at the moment, because it's just a very safe bet in terms of what we need to do. The other thing as well is with these particular shots, which I'm really delighted to show you, they were part of a crowdfunding video created for a business called Artfinder, and I can show you all of this stuff because these guys actually launched today. The crowdfund went live today, so it's quite lucky because I had other things in the talk, and then when I realized that this was all public, then I'm absolutely fine to share it. So you can see here, when we are slating now, we're literally asking our subject to step back, and then first AC or whomever's doing this will step in, and we'll just do a quick grab, okay, for the slate. Now, we try to, if possible, if we don't have to use sticks, because in this case it was single channel audio straight into the camera, then if we don't have to slate, then we'll try and get these two things at the same time. And then this is what happens. You can see the selection is made. This has actually been done in DaVinci. We tend to use DaVinci for a lot of our editing. And straight away, you're in a really nice place, color-wise. So if you look here of Sarah there, and then that's just for the color checker. Okay, so with very, very little work, you're in a really great place. And the other thing as well that we've found is the color checker tends to bring out a lot more color than if you sort of did it manually. It seems to be able to pull that color out. Now, this wasn't a great example because if you look at that bottom chip, the reflective chip, there's a little bit of reflection in there. You really want to avoid that. But we still got enough out of this that we were able to use it, because what will happen is those reflections will actually throw out the reading. So it's one of those things that it's a little bit of a pain, but it's worthwhile if you really need accurate color. So let's have a look, and then there we go there. And also the reflections sometimes can make the it will just make it a little bit darker. So you really just need to spend a second. I mean, I didn't want to direct, this is Kev Monday, great artist. I didn't want to direct him too much with it. So it was just like, yeah, let's just grab that. But you can see here, his paintings are almost fluorescent in terms of the choice of colors that he uses within them. And you're able to get all of that out. Now, we've just found, generally speaking, when we do it manually on something like this, we won't get quite the same depth of color throughout the scene. And also you need a decent monitor to look at this stuff on. So I think BenQ is one of the sponsors for today. And that's the monitors that we use for editing on. We can talk more about the specifics around that later. So this is actually my lovely wife, who's an artist. And you can see there we've made the selection. And then that's where we end up. So there's our log file, and that's where we end up. And it does seem to bring a lot more color out of the scene, you know, and you don't have to use this, but what it does is it provides a very good starting point, okay, in terms of your color. Just wanted to show you guys, this was, you know, one of the camera angles, and this was the other camera angle in terms of that earlier BTS that you saw of Michal. Now, I'm also really delighted. These guys were, this is kind of a good news story. These guys were going for a raise of £250,000. They launched this morning. They're already up to 354,000. So they're 141% over what they were going for. And what's really lovely about that is it's obviously tremendously successful. So we, you know, I'm sure our video had a major influence on that in terms of the raise. When I was preparing for this talk, I was quite amazed how many sort of stills and bits and pieces we had where the chart is just so much a part of what we do. It's in everything. Now, before I owned a color meter, I would use the gray part of my color target to actually obviously set my white balance in camera, but on some cameras you can see what the color temperature is of the existing lights within the environment that you're in, and then I would use that to dial in the temperature of my lights. So I'll just run that again. I do a white balance, which would pick up the ambient lights within whatever the scene happened to be. And then I would then use that as the starting point to dial in the color temperature for my LED lights. Okay, so this is something that, you know, I've you know, X-Rite don't like me doing this, but I've always talked about the color charts as being precision instruments. They don't like me saying that, but it actually is a precision instrument. And like I say, you set that color on the lights, and then yeah, you can see there, obviously that's a bit extreme, but you can see the sort of nice color separation we're getting as a consequence of that. So that's the main sort of thrust of my sort of online chat, because I really want to sort of talk to you guys face to face now and get my webcam on, because that's more me as opposed to just showing passive slides. So let's just see if I can get this organized now so we can get the webcam rolling. Let's have a look. How do I do that? Adrian Weinbrecht presenting me. Okay, looks like I'm on. Can everybody see me okay? Yes, thank you very much. That's great. So I'm just gonna make a little adjustment there. Actually, I might just open that up a little bit. There we go. Lights changed a little bit from when I first set up. So I'm hoping you guys can all see me. So I prefer to sort of talk a little bit like this, and then I really want to get some questions coming through. So the chart that you saw me using, it's simply one of these. You can see that reflective tile. You've just got to just make sure you don't get that sort of thing, and a little bit of a tilt. It's still receiving the correct amount of light, and it doesn't always have to be absolutely perfectly square or anything like that. As long as you've got most of it facing towards the camera, you can get what you require. The bit that I use more than anything else is actually this bit for doing my white balances off. It's so much better than, oh God, you guys have seen me all along. I didn't realize that. Okay, oh, that's a bit embarrassing. I forgot to turn off my webcam. And then the other thing as well is X-Rite make these things in a range of sizes. So this is one of the small ones. And then there's also, you know, that's your standard size. And then they do an extra large, and then I think they do a triple extra large, which is huge. And we're going to be getting another larger one, because sometimes now, particularly when we're going to be further back with the cameras, and you're doing a lot of stuff where maybe you've got a wide angle, it's a quicker and easier way, and you don't have to move the camera, you know, towards wherever the color target happens to be. So let's talk about PPE and filming now. Okay, we've got a bag which is right here, and if you have a look inside this bag, there's the plastic sheets that I was sort of talking about that we tend to use to, if we go into someone's environment, we will lay down a plastic sheet, and then on top of that plastic sheet, we then start to put our bags and bits and pieces down. Look, it's not great from an environmental point of view, but in terms of working, this is what we're doing at the moment. You can reuse the plastic sheets, just let them decontaminate or quarantine for a couple of days. Okay, 2 to 3 days, you're going to be fine. You know, providing no one sneezed on them or anything like that. Oh, my webcam's just gone, but you can still hear me. Let me just have a quick look and see if I can work out what's happening with that. Okay, so let's see if I can get this webcam working again. Okay, there. Okay. Webcam, where are you? There we are, and we're back. Hi guys. I've just noticed there's no questions so far yet. Please start writing your questions in, and it can be about anything. It can be around lighting, around color, around using the targets, around monitors that we use. Just please ask away. Been doing this for a long, long time. So plastic bags, and then as you can see, we've got gloves. Very important to actually have the gloves in different sizes as well. Okay, we don't just have large or extra large. We've got, I think, medium, extra large, and small. You know, we have lots of gel. Okay, I ended up buying a whole bunch of this stuff in bulk, and big refill things. Okay, the other thing as well is I actually haven't looked in here before. Well, gosh, it's been quite a few days since we were last filming. Measuring tape. Okay, that just will help with your client's perception of you taking care, so you can actually measure out things. And I'm not talking about focus pulling now. I'm just talking about you know, when people are passing each other, or if you've got a setup and people are going to be in a particular place for a while, then you can actually tape off the distances where people are going to be, and you can create boundaries for things, just to make sure that you're really following up on your duty of care. Now, antiseptic wipes as well. So what we would do is, if during setup you've maybe sat, you know, a crew member down at a desk and you're setting up for that particular shot, then once that crew member leaves that desk, we'd wipe it down and we'd clean it. And we've started carrying a bigger spray thing as well, which is actually my studio. So that's a quick overview. Oh, and lots of masks. Okay, lots of those for crew to wear. So it's kind of obvious, and it's kind of not obvious in terms of how we should approach this stuff. I'd really love to get some questions now around color and things like that, because I could talk about a lot of different things in regards to color and video and stills, but until you're it's such a big conversation. And then the other thing as well is, you know, before I owned one of these, which is a color temperature meter, these are expensive. Okay, I tended to use this, like I was saying, I'd do a white balance off this. I'd have a look to see where the camera was white balancing to, and then I'd use that to then make other adjustments. So it was my way of kind of measuring the temperature of my lights and things like that. So yeah, it just makes a really cheap solution. Speaking about cheap solutions, I've got a note here. CVP is offering a 20% discount off X-Rite products. The color checkers, color check, the different size color checkers. Okay, so the passport video, which is these little ones here, like this, which are great, and then the more regular ones, like this, and then the bigger ones and the bigger ones. Okay, so there's a 20% off. That's actually a really, really good deal. And also they're offering a 5% off the BenQ 321C and the BenQ SW270C. The C is for USB-C. Okay, so it means that they actually have hubs built in. And right now I'm on I think I'm on a 32, a 321C, and then I think that one over there might be another 321 as well. They're great. That's what we use. My editor loves his. He's working from home at the moment, and he just adores that monitor. He's just so pleased with it. As a fantastic editing monitor, so that works very, very well. Yeah, all you need to do is go to CVP's website, sort of thing. Ah, we've got a question. Thank you. God, that makes me feel so good that someone's actually listening. Oh, excellent. Yep, we've got some great questions coming through. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I haven't sort of covered off in my notes here to speak to you guys about, because I really wanted this to be much more of a Q&A. A color checker is right, the color meter provides. Yep. So look, I want as many of us to be out there filming as possible. Okay, and with a little bit of thought, a little bit of planning, and a lot of consideration, it's completely doable. Okay, so please feel free to ask any questions about that, because I actually did do quite a lot of reading and research in terms of how we could actually make that happen. Right, now let me have a look at some of these questions, because I'm actually really pleased about this. There we go. Let me just make it a slightly longer stream. Okay, you're right. Okay, this is from Isabel. Hi Adrian, what's your reference monitor for stills and videos, and how do you calibrate it? Okay, that's a absolutely fantastic question. So we have BenQ monitors for editing, okay, and what we can do with the BenQs is we can set up a Rec 709 space for video editing. So we set up a calibration for that, and that's what we're tending to use, okay? And that actually gets us to a very, very good place. We do as well own a Flanders Scientific for when we're grading, and color with video is very, very particular. Now, as I'm sure many of you will know, the Flanders costs many times more than any of the BenQ monitors, okay? So the BenQ monitors will get you very, very close to what the Flanders will. It's not the same, okay? They're different animals altogether, but we will calibrate accordingly. Now for stills, the monitor I've got at the moment actually is more biased towards stills because I don't do any editing myself, okay? Or I do, but not so much. I've got a really lovely editor by the name of Gabor, and he just takes care of that stuff, okay? And he's fantastic. So what we tend to do is with the specific BenQ monitors we use for editing is we will do different calibrations using, let me see if I can find it, hang on. Where is it? Is it in the office? Okay, no, can't see it in the thing at the moment, but we've got two X-Rite calibrators, okay? One is X-Rite, I think it's i1 Pro or something or rather. We've got quite a big behemoth of a calibrator that does a really fantastic job. And then we've got a much smaller one, which is actually very good with LCD screens. So we'll tend to use that on the laptop. So whatever device we're using, even our laptops, we will calibrate them. And we will, depending on what the bias will be of that particular machine, we will either create multiple profiles or we'll just profile either for video or for stills. So I hope that answers your question, Isabel. For the Flanders monitor, we get a specialist in to calibrate that. So, and to put all of this sort of cost into perspective, we have the Flanders calibrated twice a year, and I think it costs something like 250, 300 quid each time we get it calibrated, okay? Because it's a really expensive device that's used for that. But that's a kind of broadcast orientated thing. That's also getting stuff right for if we're doing an ad for the cinema or something like that, okay? Okay, question from Robert. Thanks for the presentation. What I would like to ask, what would you recommend to get color right when you have a moving camera? Well, I think that's a really great question as well, Robert. I think in terms of a moving camera, well, there's 1,000 different ways a camera, you know, can obviously move. I think what you've got to do is you've got to work out what's the most important thing within this particular shot. So is it, I don't know, someone in a car and the camera's attached to the car and it's moving that way? Or is it something where you've got a subject, you know, standing within an environment and you may be doing a dolly or a gimbal move around that person? It just depends. But what you're going to find is that light will change as the camera is moving on your subject. But what you could do is you could maybe start with, you could take a color chart and get something at the beginning of your take at the same point at which you would say slate, for example, and maybe you could do it at the tail of the take as well. And then that way it's not having too much interference in terms of what you're doing. The most important thing is that this is receiving the same light that the subject's receiving. That's the most critical thing in all of this sort of stuff. Look, the other thing as well is just if you white balance off the back of this to start with, and even roll with that. So your colorist or your editor has an absolutely neutral gray to work with. Already you're going to be a long way in front. So that's what I would suggest in regards to that. Okay, question from Andreas: how do you monitor color on set, and how much do you rely on it with respect to modifying color in post? Okay, as mentioned, we use on set, we very often have a Flanders on set, or we will use our BenQs on set, and they are, when we're doing a feed directly in from the camera, the BenQ shouldn't be as good as it is for on-set color. So we actually rely on both of those options quite a lot. When something is absolutely color critical, then it will have the Flanders. And when something is really important and color still matters, then I'm very comfortable to use a well-calibrated BenQ as well. When we're filming a lot of stuff, we're often on red, so we're capturing in RAW. So, you know, once again, it comes back to having a consistent color reference with what you're capturing, and white balancing. Okay, you know, particularly white balancing, so you just know that you're starting in a good point. We do a lot of stuff as well on GH5s. Reason we bought GH5s is because they've got 10-bit color, so you're able to grade those really beautifully. There's a lot of color information there. In fact, I'm filming right now this webinar on one of my GH5s. They're just gorgeous. So there's a few things here. So I think, you know, it's capturing in log. It's, if you can get a camera that can capture in 10-bit, you know, so 422, that's going to make a big difference as well. And then, you know, have a consistent reference, okay, whatever that happens to be, and then your white balance there. If I haven't answered a question fully, please just feed back in or ask if you need clarification on anything, okay? Okay. Oh, am I still sharing my screen? Hang on a sec. There we go. Okay, cool. Right, sorry about that I left my screen on there. Didn't mean to do that. So for bright monitors, we have X-Rite. Okay, I1 display. Okay, there's a new product out from X-Rite. Okay, so if you've got a particularly bright monitor, there's something called the X-Rite I1 Display Pro Plus. So that's something that you could check out. Okay, something that's just been put into the thread here. Do you calibrate and set up the monitors always for Rec 709, even when producing for the web sRGB? Oh, I've got to double check that, but typically speaking, we are still Rec 709. I know that's ridiculous. We are tending to use sRGB for stills. So we will, for stills imagery, we will always be using sRGB. And we're sticking right now to Rec 709 for video. It's just very universal and utilized. But for okay, so the calibration in terms of, okay, so if we're calibrating for video, it will be Rec 709 still, okay, and if we are calibrating for stills, it's a series of things. It won't just be sRGB, okay? But what we will do is the images will have an sRGB ICC profile attached to them, so you're getting as much out of that image as possible, okay, as opposed to going with Adobe RGB. Okay, what is the most advanced skill you've acquired as a cinematographer? Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm not sure if that's a technical question or more an aesthetic thing. I think the biggest thing in having moved from being a stills guy to a cinematographer, or you know, or someone that works in video, is I think the biggest thing is actually about managing a crew, because you tended to work in stills with much tighter teams. And then, you know, as you saw in some of those BTS images, sometimes you've got on set, you know, you'll have a gaffer, they'll have an assistant, you've then feeding into various other crew, you know, so before you know it, you're maybe managing a team of, well, you're not necessarily managing, but you're sort of the head of a team of maybe, you know, 10, 12, 15, 20 people. And that's it's kind of learning to let go, to just kind of delegate stuff. I think that's one of the skills I've learned in regards to that. Oh, okay. Someone's just asked, what are your favorite lenses and formats? Okay. Look, just also in regards to formats, just to give everyone a heads up, 9:16, so vertical video, that's actually going to be a very, very big part of the future, because when we're holding a phone, we tend to hold it like that. Okay, so in terms of a format, if that's what you mean, in terms of an aspect ratio, 9:16 is going to become big. Okay, you ain't seen nothing yet around this. We've already started filming stuff in 9:16 for some clients, so that's coming. In terms of formats and lenses, it's really about what you're trying to get out of the job. We did a short film last year called Trevor, and I shot that on old Cook lenses, and I'm a Zeiss ambassador. Okay, I'll confess that right now, and I use Zeiss for a huge amount of stuff. Okay, I just love how they look. I like how they work. Just everything about it suits a lot of the work I do. However, we wanted a particular look on this particular film, so we went for Cook Pancros. So they were vintage rehoused lenses, and they just had a certain aesthetic, a certain softness, a bit crap on the edges, but they just worked really, really well. So I think in terms of lenses, it's really, we own a lot of lenses. So we've got some like vintage Nikon glass that looks absolutely stunning. And then we've got more regular style lenses as well. We've got a lot of Zeiss stuff, obviously, but it just depends. And then sometimes it's also about the practicalities. Okay, so you don't want to necessarily have a huge Angeno zoom. If you're trying to get a handheld shot from inside a car or something, then you'll use a much smaller bit of glass. So don't really have any favorites. Okay, questions come out about, do I make all the color grading on DaVinci Resolve? Okay, I don't edit. I have got a really great editor called Gabor, and he will do some grading. And then if we have more complicated grading, lovely team member is a guy called Leos, and he's an incredibly good colorist. And it does everything in Resolve. And as far as I know, there's nothing that really comes close to Resolve in terms of the capabilities of it. So yeah, everything's done in Resolve. But we were one of the first adopters into Resolve for an editing platform, because it had been very specifically a grading platform. So people would edit in Avid, they'd bring it into Resolve. That would take maybe a day or two, depending on the complexity and number of clips and things like that. So they'd conform it, is the term, and off you'd go. But we just hated that in between stage, so the conforming, because a lot of stuff we were doing had a pretty quick turnaround. We just, so when they started making it possible to edit and then just keep within Resolve, we jumped on it. Probably a bit too early, admittedly. But it's great now. It's really, really, really good now. What camera do you recommend for low light? Okay. Well, no, it's not the, okay, we've got the GH5S, which is very, very good for low light. It's way, way, way better than it should be. And then if I was doing some other, I mean, the thing is, a lot of jobs that we will do in low light, we're able to, very often we're able to light stuff, but if we're not able to light stuff, I mean, it's not just about cameras, it's also about lenses. So really think about fast glass, and think about things where you could use, one of the advantages of the Micro Four Thirds size is that you can use an adapter to increase the light that's going through to the lens, to the chip. Can't remember the name of it exactly at the moment, but it just means that you're just getting a lot of light through there. But the GH5S is very, very good. The Sonys are very, very, very good. If we had a higher end shoot that for whatever reason we needed to have a low light camera, I'd also be on one of the Reds, specifically not our Dragons. We own the Dragons, but there's a Red that's got a really fabulous low light capability, which it's just left my brain for the minute. But I'll come back to that. When filming for vertical, do you rotate your film camera 90 degrees or do you crop from 16 to 9? That's a fabulous question. We would actually, if we know that something's going to be for video specifically, then we will, if we know it's going to be 9:16 video, then we will actually we will shoot vertical. I'm just quickly going onto the Red website because I've had a bit of a brain freeze in terms of the cameras. It's the Gemini, that's the one. Okay, so coming back to the low light question, the Gemini is quite remarkable. Now, in terms of rotating and shooting vertically, yeah, we've been using our GH5s on an angle. We've also done it with the Reds as well. It's a big compromise if you start cropping a vertical. You can crop square, that's no problem at all, okay? And we did that very, very early on, where we'd create stuff for Instagram, for example, and we'd shoot a 16:9 aspect ratio, and then we'd take a square out of the middle of it. But you're asking a lot out of a frame to go 16:9, and you're going to be sort of compromising on your, sorry, to go 9:16, and you're going to be compromising your 16:9 frame, okay, if you do that. So I think it's best to understand where, in terms of where this content's going to live, what's our priority? Is it a vertical video? Is it a square video, for example, or is it a more regular format or a horizontal one as such? Okay, so there's no more questions. That's interesting, which is cool. So just thank you all for watching. It's quite weird this, because there's no feedback. I've done lots of live talks. It's the first time doing something like this. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to see or ask or anything like that? I hope that helped. I hope I've managed to explain a few things around distancing, calibration, all that sort of thing. So I think we're all good. So thank you very, very much for watching, and don't forget about the discounts at CVP. Oh, there's a plug here saying maybe tell people about your Instagram. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Just Adrian Weinbrecht is the Instagram handle. So yeah, check it out. I'll be posting a lot of BTS stuff, and I do lighting diagrams as well of some things. So feel free to, didn't know I could do that. Feel free to join me and say hello. So great. So thank you very much, everybody. All right, so take care and stay safe.